Hello, this is Angelia. We had some technical difficulties, so we're starting this over. My laptop's decided it has to do a major update, so it's not running. So we're doing this on the tablet, which is dark and creepy looking, but it's what's working right now. So here we go. uh, if you just tuned in, you're listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do, a podcast that talks a little bit about human development and psychology to try and help you maybe figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about self-esteem, and we're going to continue on that line of self-esteem. According to Erickson, a major determination of self esteem is children's view of their capacity for productive work. The issue to be resolved in middle childhood is industry versus inferiority. The virtue that develops with successful resolution of this crisis is competence, a view of the self as able to master skills and complete tasks. So if you don't allow your child to do anything, then they don't feel like they can do anything. Children have to learn skills valued in their society. Arapesh boys in New Guinea learn to make bows and arrows and to lay traps for rats. Arapesh girls learn to plant weed and harvest. Inuit children of Alaska learn to hunt and fish. Children in industrialized countries learn to read, write, count, and use computers. Like Marian Anderson, many children learned household skills and help out with odd jobs. You should allow your children to do that. Your children should have some responsibilities around the house so that they learn how to do something other than sit around. Children compare their abilities with those of their peers. If they feel inadequate, they may retreat to the protective embrace of the family. So they're comparing themselves with the people around them. And I actually noticed that when I was in third grade, where there was this girl who I used to clean the sinks with, and she did a great job, beautiful job. She even dried the water, and I had never thought about that when I would wash the sink that you should get a paper towel and dry the water. So I felt like, oh, she knows more about this than me, but I was not allowed to do that sort of thing at that age, so I didn't know. If, on the other hand, they become too industrious, they may neglect social relationships and turn into workaholics. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that. A different view of the sources of self worth comes from research by Susan Harder. She asked 8 to 12-year-olds to rate their appearance, behavior, school performance, athletic ability, and acceptance by other children, and to assess how much each of these areas affected their opinions of themselves. The children rated physical appearance most important. So those poor kids, at that age, at that preteen age, are worried the most about how they look, and that's a shame because looks are overrated. They're not the most important thing. Who you are inside as a person is the most important thing. But that age, they're hung up on looks. Social acceptance came next. So if they're popular or not is the next important thing. So those poor preteen kids are more worried about the looks and the popularity than anything else in their life. The children rated physical appearance as most important. Less critical were schoolwork, conduct, and athletics. So schoolwork came down to a third on the list of important things in life. So when your kids worried more about how they look and if they're popular or not, they're normal. In contrast, then, to the high value Erickson placed on a mastery of skills, Harder suggests that today's school age children, at least in North America, judge themselves more by good looks and popularity. So, like I said, that's not good, but it's a reality. So you need to talk to your kids about, looks not being the most important thing, that, who they are as a person should be the more important thing. And not everyone's going to be popular all the time. Even if you start out popular, you might end up not being popular. You might start out not being popular, and end up being popular. My grandma had a saying about you either get your swan years early and then you're an ugly duckling later, or you're an ugly duckling first and you get your swan years later. So, a major contributor to self esteem is social support. First, from parents and classmates, then from friends and teachers. Do they like and care about the child? And that is the most important thing in a child's mind. Do they like me? Do they care about me? And if the answer in their mind is no, then they're going to be a very unhappy child because they don't feel like anyone likes them or cares about them. And we all know that that usually has a bad end. Do they treat the child as a person who matters and has valuable things to say? Again, you should be listening to everything your kid has to say. And if the answer is no to that one, that's also a problem. A lot of people later on feel like they have no worth in the world, and that doesn't end well. Even if Mike thinks it's important to be handsome and smart and considers himself both, his self esteem will suffer if he does not feel valued by the important people in his life. So you could be the most good looking, popular person, but if the people around you don't value you in any way, you're not going to feel good about yourself. Still, social support generally will not compensate for a low self evaluation. So, if they have low self esteem, sometimes even when you're building them up, it's not going to help. If Juanita thinks sports are important, but that she is not athletic, she will lose self esteem no matter how much praise she gets from others. Because children internalize everything. Ear itch here, sorry. And so no matter what other people say, if she feels that's important and she's not good at it, then she's going to feel bad about herself. So that's when you can usually intervene or send them to a counselor who can intervene and say, hey, this ain't everything. This is, something that, isn't that big a deal. And, hopefully they listen. Children who are socially withdrawn or isolated may be overly concerned about their performance in social situations. And that's usually the case. There are a lot of people who are socially awkward, who isolate themselves, or loners, as it's called, and they're over concerned about how they perform in social situations. And usually that's due to the parents', criticalness of how they performed in a prior social setting, or by displaying the child as an object to be looked over by the friends of the parent, and that can make them feel not good about themselves. They may attribute rejection to their own personality deficiencies, which they believe they are helpless to change. So you got to talk to kids about that. If they feel bad about something in their life and they want to fix it, help them fix it. And if it's not something they feel like they want to do, then tell them it's not that big a deal. It does. It won't. It's not going to matter 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Um, just you know, let it go. Sometimes you have to tell a kid to let it go, and it's hard, especially for them. They don't understand that, but you need to kind of keep an eye on things so that they don't get too far down in the dumps. Rather than trying new ways to gain approval, they repeat unsuccessful strategies or just give up, and that's a shame because that leads to bad things. This is similar to the helpless pattern in younger children. Children with high self esteem, by contrast, tend to attribute failure to factors outside themselves or to the need to try harder. And sometimes that's just it. You just need to try harder. Like the saying goes, if you don't succeed the first time, try again. If initially unsuccessful, they persevere, trying new strategies until they find the one that works. As children grow older, they are more aware of their own and other people's feelings. And we all have feelings, and you should be aware of others' feelings. You should be aware of your own feelings. And that way you can process accurately and relate to people in an accurate way. They can better regulate their emotional expression in social situations, and they can respond to others' emotional distress. And that's, a good thing to be able to do for your friends, to respond to their emotional distress, to comfort them, have compassion for them, try to help them out. Um, you know, by age 7 or 8, shame and pride, which depend on awareness of the implications of their actions and on what kind of socialization children have received after their opinion of them, affect their opinion of themselves. And we got a bin there. That word went weird. All right, but yeah, um, they evaluate themselves, how they performed in the situation, and they can be very critical of themselves and think, "Oh man, I did a bad job, and I should have did this, should have did that." And we all do that, and that's how we learn to be better next time. How to learn to deal more effectively with others. Increasingly, children can verbalize conflicting emotions. As Lisa says, most of the boys at school are pretty yucky. I don't feel that way about my little brother, Jason, although he does get on my nerves. I love him, but at the same time, he also does things that make me mad. And I think we all feel that way about our siblings. We love them, but sometimes they do things that make us mad. But I control my temper. I'd be ashamed of myself if I didn't. And so she's a very insightful girl because a lot of us at the age of 8, we're not controlling our tempers. Shameful. So, you know, that's an insightful child there. Children become more empathetic and more inclined to pro social behavior in middle childhood. So that's the age when you can kind of understand others better, understand their feelings, and, do think of ideas to do things for people, that might help them out. Buzz off, bug, name Jesus. Oh, pro social behavior is a sign of positive adjustment. Prosocial children tend to act appropriately in social situations, to be relatively free from negative emotions, and to cope with problems constructively. Now, there are some adults who are stuck at the age prior to that. They do not behave appropriately in social situations. They are not free from negative emotion and they do not cope with problems constructively. So that tells you there that somewhere in middle childhood, they developed a psyche wound, an emotional wound that has got them stuck in this pattern that they cannot move beyond and negotiate the pro social behavior stage. Um, so, this is something that a counselor or psychologist could, help someone with. Control of negative emotions is an aspect of emotional growth. So you should be able to control your negative emotions. Children learn what makes them angry, fearful, or sad and how other people react to a display of these emotions. And they learn to adapt their behavior accordingly. And that's if they're mentally healthy. Some people, like I said, never get to that point and they're not. And so they do not control themselves very well. I'm sure we've all seen people like that. Um, and we're going to talk about the levels of understanding of conflicting emotions. Um, at the age of 3 to 6 years, children understand that. Let's see. The children do not understand that any two feelings can coexist. They cannot even acknowledge feeling two similar emotions at once, such as mad and sad. And of course, we know you can feel those. Carlos says you can't have two feelings at the same time because you only have one mind. And as we know, our mind is very complex and we can have a lot of feelings at the same time. At age 6 to 7 years, children are developing separate categories for positive and negative emotions. They can be aware of two emotions at the same time, but only if both are either positive or negative and are directed toward the same target. Kayla says, if my brother hit me, I would be mad and sad. 7 to 8 years old, children can recognize having two feelings of the same kind directed toward different targets. However, They cannot acknowledge holding contradictory feelings. And like I said, some adults never quite get to this point. This is a maturational task by the age of 8, and some grown-ups never even got here. So, therapy could help them out. Dominic says, I was excited about going to Mexico and glad to see my grandparents. I wasn't scared. I couldn't feel glad and scared at the same time. I would have to be two people at once. Age 8 to 10 years. Children can integrate sets of positive and negative emotions. They can understand having contrary feelings at the same time, but only if they are directed toward different targets. Ashley can express a negative feeling towards her baby brother. I was mad at Tony, so I pinched him. And a positioned positive feeling toward her father. I was happy my father didn't spank me, but she cannot recognize that she has positive and negative feelings, anger and love towards both. By 11 years old, children can describe conflicting feelings toward the same target. Lisa says, I'm excited about going to my new school, but I'm also a little scared too. That is a level of understanding of conflicting emotions that should be something that you go through when you're developing pro social behavior. They also learn the difference between having an emotion and expressing it, because sometimes we have emotions that we don't express. We can suppress them and not express them. Kindergartners believe that a parent can make a child less sad by telling the child to stop crying, or can make a child less afraid of a dog by telling the child there is nothing to be afraid of. So kindergartners kind of have that, you know, oh, look at you, like you're godlike in their eyes. That if you say it, it's true. And that's unfortunate for some kids, because adults will use that to run a little con on the kid and mess their life up. Um, Sixth graders know that an emotion may be suppressed, but it still exists. By middle childhood, children are well aware of their culture's rules for emotional displays. In many interviews with 223 second, fourth, and fifth graders in the United States and Nepal, three distinct cultural patterns emerged. Lower caste Tamang children in Nepal, who are taught to be submissive, were more likely to report feeling shame in difficult situations than either upper caste Brahmin children in Nepal or U.S. children, both of whom tend to have high self-esteem. Brahmin children, who are taught to be highly self-aware and self-controlled, were less likely to express anger than U.S. children, who are taught to be self-assertive. So in these three distinct cultures, we have three different ways of expressing the emotions. The ones who are taught to be more submissive don't. They try to handle that themselves. The ones who are taught to be, more cool, calm, and collective, try to handle it in a more constructive way. And then there's U.S. children who are taught to be more self-assertive, who might, you know, I've heard parents say, well, if they hit you, you hit them back harder. It's like, no, no, guys, come on. We're not promoting child fights, are we? What the heck? Such cultural rules are communicated through parents' reactions to children's displays of feelings. U.S. children whose mothers encourage them to express feelings constructively and help them focus on solving the root problem tend to cope more effectively and have better social skills than children whose mothers devalue their feelings by minimizing the seriousness of the situation. And I've heard parents like that too. It's like, it's not that big a deal. You're overreacting, blah, blah, blah. It's like, clearly this is bothering your child. Your child's bothering to come to you and talk to you about this. You should at least listen and respond like a, decent parent would. Parents who acknowledge the legitimize children's own feelings of distress encourage empathy and pro social development. And that's something I always try to do with my kids. I know so I'll be like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Something's wrong. I can tell. I'm your mom." And then I, you know, get what it was, and I could empathize with them and tell them how things happened when I was a kid or whatever. Um, and that does that teach the child to be more empathetic, and it teaches them how to be an encourager to other people too. When parents show disapproval of or punish negative emotions, the emotions may become more intensely expressed and may impair children's social adjustment, because the child is taught their emotions are not okay, but they have these emotions anyway, so they're going to express them someplace, you know, and chances are that it's going to be onto someone else, and that's not good. So listen to your kids. Don't punish them for having emotions. If you have emotions, you're not going to punish yourself for having emotions. That's just idiots stuff. Excuse me. Sometimes I go a little too far on these parent lectures, but you know, it's important stuff, people. It's the most important job you ever have. Or such children may learn to hide negative emotions, but may become anxious in situations that evoke them. And there are a lot of people like that. Anxious, they might have got scolded as a kid for having emotions, and now they're anxious adults and they don't know what to do. I feel a certain way. I got to get away and I got to run. And because the anxiety level is so high, they just cannot legitimately deal with and process their own emotions. As children approach early adolescence, parental intolerance of negative emotion may heighten parent child conflict because the children know they're going to have emotions. And if you don't validate their emotions, they're going to be upset with you, because they are recognizing now that you're not allowing them to have emotions that they're having. And so that's going to create some tension between you all. This is one of many ways in which the family environment affects children's development. Because, like I said, you learn what you live. Everything that happens to the child, everything that goes on, is something that's going to affect them. School age children spend more time away from home than when they were younger and become less close to their parents. That's just a fact of life. The world opens up for them a little bigger. They have, you know, friends or, frenemies or plain old enemies in school. They have teachers who care about them or not, and the world gets bigger. With the upsurge in dual earner and single parent families, greater emphasis on education, and the tighter pace of family life, children spend more time at school or in childcare and in organized activities than a generation ago. And, that's just a fact of life. The days of our great grandmas and grandmas, being at home, um, just aren't a reality anymore because the rate of inflation has gone up much more than the you know rate of pay. So unfortunately, just two parents working is mostly a reality unless one of them gets a really good job where the other one can stay home. I know people who've done that, doctors who have the spouse stay home, or one woman was a nurse and she made enough money, she got to be a advanced surgical nurse, and she got enough money to where the husband could stay home with kids. So you don't know, but in general, people got to work. They have less free time for unstructured play, outdoor activities, and leisurely family dinners. And like I said, I tried to structure that, and that's why I worked what they call full part time. I worked for 6 hours a day when I worked at as a telemarketer, and then I worked 4 hours a day at other places, 4 to 5, um, so that I could be home when the kids got home. I would get them ready for school, get them out the door, go to work, get my work in, come back home, so I could be home by 4 o'clock. So then we could, have their snack and talk about the day, what happened today. Go outside from 4:30 to 5, have the playtime outside, and then 5 o'clock homework. All right, and then while we're doing homework, mom's checking emails, getting the mail in, paying the bills. And if they have problems with the homework when I'm done with my thing, then we sit down and work on that. And then we have dinner at 6. And then at 7 o'clock, we do the housework, work on a little more homework if we need to. Hopefully, the homework is done by then, but not always. Especially with one of my kids who had problems reading. Um, then we did the housework, cleaned the house, and then family time. We sat down, for an hour and watched TV. Then we had some dessert, and then the bath started. So I kept that routine, so they could have some normalcy because I was divorced. I was a single mom. I was working, while they were at school, and I wanted them to have that routine because that helps a child to feel secure emotionally, that the same thing's going to happen every day, even though other things in the home are not, you know, stable. Uh, that is. And that's helpful to the child to know that this is what's going to happen every day. Much of the time, parents and children spend together is task centered: shopping, preparing meals, cleaning house, and doing homework. Still, home and the people who live there remain an important part of a child's life because, like I said, the parents are the first point of relationship in the world, and those relationships are going to affect every other relationship that the child has. To understand the child in the family, we need to look at the family environment, its atmosphere, and its structure or composition. These, in turn, are affected by what goes on beyond the walls of the home. As Bronfenbrenner's bioecological theory describes, additional layers of influence, including parents' work and socioeconomic status, and societal trends such as urbanization, changes in family size, divorce, and remarriage, help shape the family environment and thus children's development. Like I said, children learn where they live. Everything that they experience impacts them in some kind of way. Beyond these influences are cultural experiences and values that influence family life and the roles of family members. For example, African American families, like Marian Anderson's, have carried on African extended family traditions, which have helped them adapt to life in the United States. These traditions include living near or with kin, frequent contacts with relatives, a strong sense of family obligation, willingness to take additional relatives into the household, and a system of mutual aid. Important goals of parenting include teaching children how to deal with racial discrimination, such as Anderson's rejection by the music school, and instilling ethnic pride. And like I said in another one of the podcasts, you should have pride in your culture. And if anyone tells you differently, they probably get that ist on the back of their name that I don't like. As we look at the child in the family, then we need to be aware of outside influences that impinge upon it. Because you can have the best family in the world and then go to school and have a very different experience. The most important influences of the family environment on children's development come from the atmosphere within the home. Is it supportive and loving, or conflict ridden? Because children are going to thrive better in a supportive, loving environment than in one where their parents are fighting all the time. Does the family have enough money to provide for basic needs? Often, these two facets of family atmosphere are interrelated. As children's lives change, so do the issues between them and their parents, and the ways in which issues are resolved. During the course of childhood, control of behavior bleh, gradually shifts from parent to child because someday that child is going to have to be in charge of themselves. They're going to be out in the world. You're going to be an adult, and it's up to them to control their own behavior. You're not going to be there to say, don't do that again. So you need to instill that in them while they're young. And that's where I'm going to leave you today. I hope this maybe helped you to figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. Until next time.